We begin tonight with the controversy surrounding the interpretation of a Supreme Court ruling which nullified the judgment of the Court of Appeal in Abuja that recognized Julius Abure as the national chairman of the Labour Party. In a unanimous decision, the Apex Court ruled that the Court of Appeal lacked jurisdiction to declare Abure the national chairman, as the case's substance pertained to the party's leadership. The Supreme Court emphasized that leadership issues are internal affairs of a political party, over which courts have no authority. Notably, the court also observed that Abure's tenure had expired, while the Abure camp have welcomed the Supreme Court's judgment, stating that it validates their stance that political matters are indeed internal party affairs. They claim the ruling does not mean that Julius Abure is no longer the party chairman, national chairman.
When we came to the Supreme Court looked at the cases and said that no, that since the two lower courts have found that the substantive dispute was the issue of leadership of a political party, that they had no jurisdiction to pronounce Abure as national chairman of the party, and that their judgments were not out of jurisdiction, and they set aside the judgment. And also the Supreme Court went ahead to make the point that political parties, on the need for political parties to be well guided by their constitution and guidelines, especially on the issue of tenure of officers. And that Julius Abure's tenure, he has outlived his tenure. So that is the purpose of the judgment. And that the issue of who determines leadership of a political party is entirely within the domestic realm of a political party, and not for the two lower courts to look at.
The message I have for the party members is that all along they have been so patient, because situations have risen where they should have rioted or reacted violently, but they have been so patient. So I'm telling them that they should now still remain patient, and let's build the party together. All hands must be on deck moving forward.
And for more on this story, Abayomi Arabambi, National Publicity Secretary of the Labour Party in the Abure camp, joins me from Abeokuta, Ogun State. Also, Fred Nzeako, a constitutional lawyer, joins me from Lagos. Thank you, both of you gentlemen, for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'll start with you, Fred. As a legal practitioner, what's your interpretation of the Supreme Court judgment? All right. Fred, if you can hear me very well, my question is, as a legal practitioner, what is your interpretation of the Supreme Court judgment? All right, let's bring in Abayomi then, while we are trying to fix Mr. Nzeako's audio or whatever technical problems he's experiencing. Abayomi. Oh, great. So talk to me if you could hear me. How do you see that ruling? How do you interpret it? Abayomi, you belong to the Abure camp of the Labour Party leadership, and your faction has a different interpretation of today's Supreme Court ruling. Tell us about it.
Well, thank you very much. There is no faction in the Labour Party, even as pronounced by the Supreme Court today. But you see, I will need to explain to Nigerians so that they will not take shenanigans of this on that side. On September 28, 2024, there was a judgment from the Federal Court delivered by Justice Abure, where he ordered NEC to remove our candidate, Dr. Femi, from the INEC portal on the ground that Abure was not the chairman of the party, and that the purported committee appointed by Joe Ajeru, they were the people, that have the constitutional right to submit name to INEC. INEC obliged and obeyed that order, despite the fact that we were denied fair hearing. So it was at that point, do not forget, after the publication of Ayolorun Femi was when APCNE ran to Federal High Court under Justice Abure. So I want you to take note of where this jurisdiction of a matter is coming from. We now file an appeal in Abuja, and Justice Edmund Baka in a lead judgment read by Justice Olubukola Banjoko, said the issue of leadership is an internal affair of the party and the federal court lacked jurisdiction. That was where that matter, first of all, emanated, that the Federal Court of Justice, ought not to dabble into that. It is issue of internal party affair, and they don't, that the court lacked jurisdiction. What happened was that the former president of NFC, Abure was the one that wrote letter to INEC claiming to be chairman, and that was where the issue of leadership, first of all, emanated. That was one. So on November 13, when we now appeal, a judgment now affirmed and dismisses the judgment of the lower court for want of jurisdiction. Want of jurisdiction. That one left, and the court now order INEC to take Dr. Abayomi Arabambi back into the INEC portal. So that was why Abayomi Arabambi of the Abure leadership, contested the election. The INEC was now recruited into this shenanigan. They prevented the chairman and secretary from coming into the INEC consultative meeting. When they were prevented, that was when the unanimous committee also sprang up. They now claim to be the leader of the party. It was at this point that Abure now proceeded to another federal court because INEC was challenging the legality of the convention, claiming they did not monitor. And that is not the business of a political party in Section 82, 1-5, stated that political parties shall give INEC 21-day notice. Sub 5 said it is fatal if you fail to give them notice, the outcome of the convention of the congresses will not be accepted, it will be nullified. So it was based on this that Abure now approached federal court, who now reaffirmed the fact that INEC cannot recognize Abure for the simple fact that he said he didn't monitor that Congress. It was at this point that the unanimous committee now filed application for a joinder. So when the joinder was delivered, they and INEC now proceeded to Court of Appeal. In that judgment of January 17, Justice Aman Baka repeated one thing, that, gentlemen, this issue of leadership is not justiciable. Therefore, we declare jurisdiction because it is purely an internal affair of the party, one, and that there is still a subsisting judgment of November 13. I want you to take note. Subsisting judgment of November 13 that has not been appealed up to date. Therefore, he now dismisses their appeal. They now present to Supreme Court. Supreme Court also today says, for want of jurisdiction, issue of, leadership of a party is internal affair. But what Supreme Court says that is making them to run necessary scatter is the Supreme Court actually scolded the second court of appeal that they were not supposed to have even delved into the issue of leadership. That was the judgment of November 17.
Right.
Because ab initio, November 13, the court has already, for want of jurisdiction, declined, told the federal court that you lack jurisdiction to entertain political party matters when it border on, leadership.
Abayomi, let me quickly come in here. Let me come in here. Fantastic background to this issue. In case anyone has forgotten, you've recapped it properly for us. Fred Nzeako is back online and all his technical issues are gone now. Thank you so much for rejoining the show. As a legal practitioner, how would you interpret the Supreme Court judgment over whether or not Abure is the national chairman of the Labour Party? Quickly.
Unfortunately, I didn't hear much of what Mr. Abayomi Arabambi said, the robust background he laid. But strictly speaking, the Supreme Court judgment today is an affirmation or a reconfirmation of a plethora of judgments earlier given by the Supreme Court, which holds that issue of party leadership is an internal affair of the political party. And the court should not be the one to meddle into such issue, and the court should not be the one to decide for the party who their leadership will be and who leads the party. Or rather, what the court has always done is to ask the party to go by their constitution, respect the provisions of their constitution, hold their conventions as and when due, and then elect their leadership based on the principles and the procedures laid down in the party's constitution. That has always been the position of the Supreme Court. And what has happened today is that the Supreme Court has further affirmed such position and given the vet to that fact that internal democracy is needed in political parties. And if they don't obey the rules and the provisions of their constitution, then they are the ones undoing themselves and not the judiciary.
I think the factions of the Labour Party leadership all agree that internal political affairs should be solved by political parties, but I guess this is where they disagree. That whether or not the judgment today sacks Mr. Abure as Labour Party chairman. How would you read into it before I bring in Abayomi?
The Supreme Court has said that Mr. Abure is not the leader of the party. What it simply means is that that convention which Mr. Abure, that so-called convention which Mr. Abure organized and his men organized in Nnewi, whereby he re-elected himself or whereby they re-elected him as the chairman of the party, does not hold anymore. Then the internal mechanism of the party must be activated for them to streamline the issues of leadership. Because what it simply now means is that there seems to be a vacuum in a manner of speaking. On one side, you have the Nana Usman-led Practical Committee, and on the other side, you have Mr. Abure-led committee, which has now been sacked by the Supreme Court. I do not know where Mr. Apapa stands, but I think Mr. Apapa may have gone home following the judgments by the lower court, that is the High Court and the Court of Appeal.
All right, Fred, let me quickly bring in Abayomi here.
Affirmed that of Julius Abure, Mr. Apapa may have gone home. Now it is between Abure and the Nana Usman-led committee.
Right.
And the party needs to activate the internal mechanism to decide pointedly who the leader of the party should be.
All right, Abayomi, you've just heard what Fred said. How do you respond? He said that Abure, the ruling by the Supreme Court today means that Abure translates that Abure is no longer the party chairman.
I'm not sure he read their notice of appeal, because you bring your case for notice of appeal that you fight before Supreme Court. They were not even the party to this matter at the federal court. If Supreme Court directed, declined jurisdiction to entertain that matter, why would Supreme Court have scolded an appeal court for delving into the internal affairs of a party by pronouncing a leader? It would be the same Supreme Court that would now tell Nigeria that, oh, the convention you did is illegal. Was the convention before Supreme Court? What Supreme Court said today was that, and that has been repeated because he said he didn't hear me. I said they commenced this issue in the federal court in September 2024, where Ebisheni rushed to court to go and dispute the leadership of Labour, and which Justice Emeka Nwite granted his request and ordered our candidate, Dr. to be removed on the NL portal. It was when we now approached the Court of Appeal that Court of Appeal said, ab initio, federal court lacked jurisdiction to delve into internal affairs of a political party, and our appeal was allowed because when we went to appeal for was that we cited so many Supreme Court judgments that said issue of leadership is not justiciable before court of law. Now, the second part was the one that was delivered on January 17th, and Justice Bakassi repeated it, that the judgment of November 13 that set aside the judgment of federal court of September 2024 for want of jurisdiction. You know, when they call that jurisdiction, every matter before that court is dead on arrival. Now, they said the federal court lacked jurisdiction. Therefore, they will not entertain it. They allow the appeal.
Abayomi, let me come in here. Abayomi, let me come in here quickly. How about this part of the judgment, of the ruling that says that Abure's tenure had expired? What does the Labour Party constitution say about chairmanship tenures and elections? Speak to us quickly about that.
When the CTC comes out, if this my gentleman friend claim they made mention of the issue of expiration of tenure, I will give him 1 million. But if no, he will give me 1 million. We are not in a position. Let us take a bet. There is nothing like that. Supreme Court declined jurisdiction and told the Court of Appeal that ordinarily you are not supposed to delve into that issue of who is the chairman or not chairman when they deliver their judgment, because there was a judgment of November 13th that has not been appealed. I want my friend to know that when a Court of Appeal has granted the judgment, I didn't appeal it. You understand? It is at your peril. Now, the other one they went for was what the court now today said it is not just
Abayomi, okay, great.
You cannot bring issue of leadership before. But let me tell you, who are the appellants? Nenadius man was the appellant. Supreme Court is not a football field where you play draw. You don't play draw. It is either A or B. What the court says is that this appeal,
all right,
you understand, ordinarily,
let me quickly come in here. I get that. I get the point you're trying to make, and I'm sure our viewers also understand. Just quickly, thanks, Abayomi. Quickly, it's a yes or no answer in this case. Has Mr. Abure's tenure as the chairman of Labour Party expired? Yes or no?
It has not expired. You see, it's there 3 years, and this is the rule.
Okay.
You see, he became party chairman. It has not expired. No, let me explain to Nigeria. He became party chairman in 2021. I was the state chairman in Ogun that moved that motion, and Alhaji Farouk.
Let me come. All right, quickly, Fred, before I quickly round this up, if political parties are to resolve their issues internally, why do we keep seeing them go to the court? A quick answer to that and a response to Mr. Abayomi.
The quick answer is that politicians most times do not want to respect their laid down procedures in their constitution. That is their challenge. They will always want to circumvent the constitution because of selfish political interest. If Arabambi is insisting that Abure's tenure has not expired, that means that the convention, which the party members described as a chara that was held in Nnewi sometime last year or last 2 years, which re-elected Julius Abure as the party chairman, that caused a lot of brouhaha, that also now emptied all the leadership of the party to court. That means that they are trying to make it, to give it life. But that convention was one of the major challenges that they have, because they said that the tenure of Abure had ended, and that was why the caretaker committee was installed to be able to organize a credible convention following the Labour Party's constitution.
All right.
But Julius Abure and his team sidelined that committee and went ahead a convention that now led to all these litigation that they're having in court.
All right.
So it is not correct to say that Abure still remains as the chairman. It will not be accepted by all Labour Party members, and especially
on that note, Fred,
that is saddled with the responsibility of organizing a more acceptable convention for the party.
All right, Fred, thank you so much. This story is clearly not going anywhere. I want to say thank you to Abayomi Arabambi, National Publicity Secretary of the Labour Party, and I repeat, in the Abure camp. And also thanks Fred Nzeako, a legal practitioner, for shedding light on this story. Thanks, gentlemen, and good night.